So welcome again. I'm very, very happy and proud to have the opportunity of closing this day. I've enjoyed the sessions myself a lot. I look this year totally different than any other year before. I look at things from a totally different perspective because I'm now also the chair of a US conference called Tech Mentor. We do a conference in Orlando in a month, and we do a conference in Redmond once a year. So I'm actually scouting at the same time all the time. So I feel like an old Finnish NHL player when I'm kind of like done this for a long time and now I can get to try and pick out new talents. So honestly, if you really feel like you want to do public speaking and you're having trouble getting into US, now you have a channel. There's a few of you and one Belgian guy that will be speaking at my conference in a month. So I am actually taking the European speakers there. Anyway, the topic that we're going to talk about is called how to install application packages for the modern secure Windows. I tried to come up with something totally different. As you can see, now I'm not doing any hacking, so I could luckily get rid of the black hoodie because every hacker needs to have a black hoodie, so I had to wear it for the morning, but now I'm like, Finnish people melt at these temperatures, so I'm feeling a lot more comfortable with this. Although it is an ITPro event with a lot of people from different kinds of areas of IT nowadays, but somehow I still remember the old story of AppManagEvent being more like a packaging stuff. And then that, although it's not the case now, that kind of gave me the inspiration of doing this. I thought that if I have this opportunity, it's going to go either two ways. Either this is going to be good group therapy because you agree what I'm saying, or you'll just hate me because you're a dev, okay? I came up with this list a long time ago. I'm responsible for a lot of software certifications, meaning I certify software for different environments. They come to me and ask, we are going to deploy this horribly expensive application in our company. What should we look for? So I'm the IT admin guy who tries to tell what to look for when you're trying to buy an application, okay? So this is not that much of security as the previous session, but there's a lot of things that are security related. If this is not of interest to you, well, it should be, at least if you wait half a year, it will be of interest to you when the GDPR kicks in. So all of this certifying applications and renewing older applications because they don't take care of their user information or customer information, so it'll be on your tables probably more than ever before. I'm doing a session next week in Estonia for a company about GDPR and Server 2016, and I think a very good description from most of the Microsoft guys and also from other experts in Finland, especially the military guys, they said that the GDPR project should be looked as being equal or a little bit worse than what the year 2000 project was. So if you remember what you had to do when you kind of like certified that your NT4 was able to understand going to year 2000, stuff like that, that still didn't apply to every employee in your company. That was just IT. Now the GDPR is technically of the same level of changes, but it also includes all of your users. So honestly, next April, like Microsoft put it quite well, they are interested themselves of doing this, because if Microsoft gets a fine for screwing up with GDPR, that's $4 billion minimum. It's the minimum fine that they will get. Of course, they're making a little bit more money than many of us, but anyway, so it's a really, really big deal. You should already now probably know who I am, so we'll skip the intro slides. And, as promised, after this it's beer o'clock, okay? So, I wanted to take a few words. Now that there's two Finns here, and you should approach us, because like Finnish people are really introvert, although it might be impossible to believe of because of what I do. I'm totally fine with 3,000 people in the audience last week at Ignite, but when I have to talk to people face to face, I'm scared to death. It's just... Do you know how you know if a Finnish guy is introvert or extrovert? If you look at them, if they're looking at their shoes, they're introvert. If they're looking at your shoes, they're extrovert. That's about as far as we go, okay? So, few words in Finnish, you should know this. If you start talking to us, don't make it too complicated. If we answer with very small, very short words, that's just the language, okay? I love this. It's you, how lovely to see you. Finnish would say, mitä jätkä? Could I have a cup of coffee, please? Kahvi. I respectfully disagree with your interpretation of this scenario at hand. Vitut. It's a simple language. We're not trying to be rude. It's just very simple. And don't try to drink with us. Do not dare us. I'm serious about this. There are a lot of nations that have things like 6-packs and 12-packs and all sorts of stuff. But Finnish actually last summer started selling a 1,000-pack. And sadly, that's far from a joke. I showed this to the Estonian guys, and I was very happy about their vision for detail, because I thought it was just freaking hilarious that we actually sell a 1,000-pack of beer. They only sold like 14 of these, to be fair, during last summer. So anyway, but they were very detailed into this. So they started asking me, like, I don't know if you do this, that when you buy a bottle, if you return the bottle to the store, you get like a deposit or whatever you call it. So this actually it costs 2,000 euros, but there's 149 euros of deposit, okay? And also, if you look very clearly here, you can see that it's actually 1,080 cans. It's called a 1,000-pack, but it actually does have 1,080 cans. Plus, in Finland, the only way to sell stuff like this, buy it, you get a free bucket. Whatever they sell in Finland, you get a free bucket and they'll buy it, okay? So, 10 deadly sins of app design. I've never ever done a session like this, honestly. I do this for work a lot, but I've never ever done a session like this, so it's going to be fun. I took my old lists and tried to come up with lists, and I asked my colleagues, and I tried to come up with a list of 10 deadly sins of what usually goes wrong when you try to make applications work in Windows. What app designers don't understand about the operating system itself. So, first, wrong info on file system. People do not understand how the basic file system of Windows works. There are very strict rules in the MSD and documentation, but we all know that the devs do not adhere to those, okay? So this is probably easiest if we just take a disconnected remote desktop session. That won't help. And did someone say that the wireless is buggy? Someone actually gave me a cable. That might have been a good idea. Are these really serious that they don't work? No, it works. Nice. Okay. Let's log on. Oh, no. I should have a Windows 7 box open here. Just the traditional file system structure of a pure Windows operating system, okay? Just after installation. First of all, what goes totally wrong, of course, is the difference between program files x86 and program files. Meaning, program files is for 64-bit code, program files x86 is for 32-bit code. This is totally used incorrectly. They put things in a totally incorrect place all the time. That's not even the worst ones. If we go a bit further, is look at the structure of the profiles themselves. So let's take a command line here, and surprise, surprise, one day I will put this to the default profile, I promise. One day. So many of you have been to my courses for years, so you know I've been saying this for a decade now. But anyway, so one thing I always try to tell people is remember the good old dir/AD. Okay? Because it shows you the junction points that are put into place to have app compat with XP. Now it also tells you very well on, if you remember where the things were before, it shows you where they are now. Now there's a few really important points to this. First of all, there's no documents and settings, luckily. We got rid of the double quotes, because whenever you tried to put something on the desktop, it would just say unknown path documents, because you missed the double quotes, okay? So now they got rid of that. We got to users, and that's fine. Let's go there. And one of the first things they mess up is that they don't understand what's going on with the public profile. So let's go for their ID. First of all, there's no all users anymore. The all users is now C program data. And that's not exactly that simple. Let's get back to that in a second. There's no default user because they wanted to get rid of the space again, went just to default. Let's follow these along a little bit. So let's go and see what the program data actually is, okay? So now the program data, if you think about what it is, the ideology in this became needed because of Windows Vista and something called public folder sharing. I don't know if you remember that small checkbox that you had in Vista that was called public folder sharing. So what they started to do was you had this very simple way of managing permissions in a Windows box, meaning you could have your stuff in your documents. If you wanted to share something with every user on this box, you would put things into public documents. And then if you wanted to share it to the network, you would turn on public folder sharing. Then it would be visible from the network as well. Now that's a problem because that means that that public folder cannot be given out to the network if it has registry settings. Which meant the public folder needed to be distributed into two. We need to have public stuff and we need to have public settings, okay? So public documents, public settings. So that's why if you look at for example, public desktop, that's C users public desktop. But if you look at the app data, that is the C program data. Now, if you look at the documentation, and if you would really read that documentation, or not blaming you, but if the devs would, that states that the program data is the app data of the all users profile. That's the reason why it's there. It has to be separated from the public folder because it can't be shared out to the network. Settings need to be in a different place. When we get to app data, this is half the story. Because now that if you look at my profile, let's just see, we got, what do we have here? Student A, I think that's me. And we go for app data. And now it gets really complicated. Because now we get to the problem of most of the people who develop stuff for Windows have absolutely no idea what the hell is the difference between local and local low. It's kind of obvious to see that if you put something into the roaming, that means that if you have a roaming profile, it'll roam from a computer to another. But if you put that into the local one, it won't roam even if you have a roaming profile. But why do we have local and why do we have local low? Now that is because of integrity levels. We have different kinds of security systems inside of the Windows operating system. We got the access control lists, which means discretionary access control lists for the traditional who has modified permissions to what. And then we have system access control lists for we want to audit successful deletion from these people. Then we have the privileges, which states what are your permissions towards the operating system, who can create a page file, who can shut down the system, who can increase quotas for processes and stuff like that. And then in Windows Vista, they introduced something called the mandatory integrity control, or also known as integrity levels. They are stronger than anything in Windows when it comes to security. They're mandatory, like the name states. So the ideology behind this was that when Vista was introduced in 2006, Microsoft decided that it's not enough to say that if an admin logs onto the machine, it doesn't matter what applications he uses. It used to be so that if you're an admin on a notepad or you're an admin on a Chrome browser. That wouldn't matter because you are an admin. In the Vista time, they decided that there needs to be a separation in the fact that if you're using Outlook, if you're using a web browser, things that most commonly will infect your computer with malware, it must be more dangerous than you running Notepad, which can't run any plugins and stuff like that. So they introduced a thing called mandatory integrity control. It's been there for the past 11 years, but Microsoft doesn't really, for some reason, want to talk about it. So the idea is that you have a process here on the left side, and if that process wants to write something to a resource, let's say you have Explorer and you want to write to a file, or you have regedit and you want to write to a registry key. Traditionally, there's a few things that might block you from doing it. When we try to write, we got share permissions. Sometimes you're doing it over a share, which means share permissions might not be full control everyone, and that might restrict you from writing to it. Then there's the NTFS that should be always there, because whether you're local or whether you're doing remotely, NTFS always comes into play, hopefully. Okay, so of course there's the possibility of you using a fat file system, but let's leave it at that, okay? Now, mandatory integrity control beats anything. So integrity levels are more powerful than any of the other mechanisms inside of Windows, meaning that if I have an integrity level that is lower than the if my process has an integrity level that is lower than the resource's integrity level, even if I have full control, ownership, everything, I will get an access denied. Integrity levels always win. These integrity levels come in 4 flavors. Actually, they come in 7 flavors, but 4 of them are the ones that you can use. We got the default one for the normal user, which is medium, or an unelevated admin. Meaning, as an admin, you open up a command prompt, but you don't choose run as admin. Okay? So an unelevated admin as well. They're always medium. As on the other side, your profiles are medium. Then we have high, an elevated admin. So choose something with run as admin. You can get to this. And then we have system that can be only used by Mrs. System or local service or network service. So the service accounts can get up to that system level. Now, if you look at this, we can kind of easily figure out what's an easy way of, it's an easy use case, which would be Windows file system on the Windows folder, for example. So you have system files. If we put them on high or system, if we put them on high, your normal admin will not be able to delete them. But they could still elevate and be able to delete them. But when we put them up to system, then even an elevated admin cannot touch that file. Well, they can read the file. This only applies for write permissions in Windows. Now, what we do with dangerous applications is Explorer running as medium, but when we run IE, Edge, Chrome, or Firefox, any of these 4 currently, they start with the integrity level of low. Meaning that now your IE cannot write to your documents. You might find that a bit weird because you can go to your government website, say that I want to download a PDF, and you can put it into your documents. But that's why these browsers open a separate process to save it. If you have an old application that has like a button in the web page itself saying print report, that won't work. That's running a low privilege, running a low integrity level, and it cannot touch your medium My Documents. So now, oops, let's not go there yet. Let's look at this from the operating system's view a little bit. So, disks running out of space. That's nice. That doesn't matter in this case, luckily, but I still don't like it. Let's go here. Users, Sami, app data, iCaggles. iCaggles is the one that can show integrity levels in Windows. iCaggles, if you've ever wondered, the I, when it changed from caggles to xcaggles and then iCaggles, the iCaggles, it's not iCaggles because of the huge success of iPad and iPod and iPhone. It actually has a meaning to it, okay? So that I stands for integrity. Now iCaggles can show you that if we look at local, it says nothing. Well, now we get back to 1993. Actually, we get back to a guy who still works, even though he should be retired a decade ago, called Dave Cutler, the guy who wrote the kernel. He doesn't want to state obvious things, which means that when you don't see a mention of integrity, it is medium. There's no reason to show it there because that's the default and everyone reads the manuals, so everyone knows it's medium, okay? So there's no reason to point, like you're killing your graphical processing unit probably. I don't know why. If you look at local low, you can see that that actually is running at a low mandatory level. So the difference between local and local low is the integrity level, meaning an IE that runs as low needs a place where it can write temporary internet files. And it can write those to local low. Can't write it to local because that's considered to be a little bit more private thing than this garbage can of local low. But there is a huge difference when it comes to security on whether things go to local low or local. But I'll tell you, I haven't met more than maybe 5 devs that actually understood how this thing works. So usually they don't care, just goes to local, whatever. If you want to see this from the, like the client, the application side, you could do Process Explorer. So for example, in Process Explorer, it's very easy to just do select columns, integrity levels. And now if you look at these integrity levels, you can see that, for example, if I start IE, we'll find an integrity level for that. Where's my IE? Let's do this. Spend time finding it. Here we go. So if you look at this, you can see that my iExplore.exe is divided into 2 processes. This one is medium because it needs to be there to save the files. It's kind of the frames around the browsing component itself. And then when you start opening tabs, they're low, unless you do something which most people don't know as well. There's many of you who've been to my courses, so you've heard more than enough me telling about this, but I hate the fact that people do not understand what happens when they add a website to trusted sites in Windows. So people see trusted sites only as a thing that says whether scripts run or whether you can run ActiveX components and things like that. They don't understand that if you put a web page into the trusted sites, it actually increases that integrity level to medium. And that is very, very dangerous when it comes to crypto lockers and stuff like that, things that need to touch your data. This explains a lot of things in Windows. I'm quite sure some of you at least have been wondering why, for example, in Windows Vista, we suddenly had this problem where I have a file here and I would like to do something with it from the command prompt. Doesn't work. Why? Because this is medium integrity and this is high integrity. This is an elevated command prompt. It's running on a higher integrity level than the Explorer.exe process, which means they can't write to each other. There's a lot of things that get explained by this stuff. Microsoft actually, it's an official thing called, a guy wrote the whole concept back in 1973. Ken Biba, if I remember his name correctly. And he has this, like 6 different kinds of integrity levels. Microsoft wanted to take this standard and work like this standard, but then as usual Microsoft ended up in trouble, which means they started inventing little exceptions to the standard. Because they were faced with a problem that many people don't think about, which is this. Now the on-screen keyboard runs as medium, so you could not write to an elevated command prompt. Can't write to it. They couldn't type to their own command prompts if they used run as admin. So they invented a integrity level called medium-high. And it's somewhere in between this standard. So these file structures and file systems are very poorly understood. We'll get back to that a little bit more. Registry, this is a simple one. Let's just look at this. To regedit. I just hate the fact that people do not understand the difference between system and software. You get things all over the place in totally different places, although there is a strict documentation that states software has application settings that are not required for this operating system to boot. System should only have stuff that is required for this operating system to boot. But do they care? No. Wrong info on services. Install SAP. SAP. Who uses SAP? SAP. Got to be more of you. You don't understand that your coffee mugs are controlled by SAP. It's like they take over the whole company when they start doing anything. And anyway, SAP is a great example. Try to install SAP on a cluster. And they have this instruction. So you have to create these 16 different domain accounts that are used by the services to be able to do stuff. It's just insane. Paula was here just before me, so if you look at Paula's great blog, where they have the videos, they got an exceptional, they got a really, really good video about how to abuse service accounts. Because that's the easiest way to hack an environment, is that you put a service running with a user and a password. That is the dead easiest thing in Windows to get the password from. Yet, most applications ask you to do this, exactly this. Although, with Server 2008 R2, they should be using managed service accounts, which don't have to save the password. If you go to Server 2012 or R2, then you're using group managed service accounts, which is actually the first really bulletproof way of blocking people from stealing your service passwords. So, well, let's not go there bulletproof. I mean, like, currently considered secure. Many times we don't need this because people don't understand that services since Vista have identities. So every service has a SID. They forget this totally. The old problem was that every service was running a system, local service, or network service, which ended up in this problem, because we couldn't say that let's block system, no, we couldn't say that let's block spooler from writing to the Windows folder, because you would block every service running as Mrs. System, and nothing would work. On the other hand, you couldn't allow network service to write to program files, because that would then allow any service running as network service to write to program files. So they needed more granularity to this. That's why they introduced service SIDs. These things explain quite a lot. For example, I'm quite sure every one of you has opened a Windows file only to realize that it's owned by a guy called Trusted Installer. Okay? Now that guy, who the heck is that? That is actually just get display name for Trusted Installer. That is a service called Windows Modules Installer. You can see it in the services list if you want, okay? So it's here. It's nothing special, it's this guy here, Windows Modules Installer, this one. That is the one you see in those ACLs, the access control lists. It's this service. Because sometimes you would not have to you would not have to create a service account, because you could just have a service folder here, and then I will do right-click, properties, security, edit, add, change to the local, that's great. Have that there for everything, and then you type in NT space service spooler, for example. And now you got spooler there, and you can say, let's allow spooler to modify this. You can get away with a lot of things without creating a service account. But it's done like that since Windows NT, so people still do it the old way. You have to be careful with these tools a bit. because I think I showed this like 2 years ago when I was here. I think so. Feels like I've been on this stage talking about this thing previously. Be careful with this thing, because it doesn't check if the service actually exists. Very Windows-like behavior, no error checking. But it's great at Microsoft Ignite at US. Not to say anything bad about US, but you know that they're a bit paranoid. So the first time I went to TechEd in 2013, and I had to make an impression and make the audience remember me, totally unknown guy from Finland trying to get into these big stages. So what I did for the first time was I showed them on stage that, for example, SC shows it, you can see the hidden services as well. There's the NSA Prism hidden underscore A01, which is the one that everyone's been talking about, how NSA spies on all Windows computers. Oh my God! And on Twitter, like, Mr. Laiho found the secret NSA service. I've had so much fun with this. All right. Services can have privileges as well. You don't have to create a service because it needs to create a page file or whatever. So SCQ privs, you can also see that Spooler has these certain privileges as well. So you can control services exactly like you control users, which is great. Software requires admin rights. No, it doesn't. This is the thing I hate the most. This started when I was working for a training company in Finland, 2001, started working for them. And that was the time when VMware Workstation was like the coolest thing in the block. Finally, we could do like virtualization on a normal laptop, and it was so cool. And even then, I wanted to run everything as a limited user, but VMware Workstation was really bad. It could never start without admin rights. And you would call VMware, hi, our company does not allow our end users to be admins, so how can we run VMware Workstation without admin? You can't. It doesn't work. It took me like 2 freaking days to go through all those privileges, and that's the annoying thing. There's 38 privileges given to an admin. VMware Workstation required the one that you saw earlier if you were on my session called impersonate a client after authentication. 1 privilege. I would rather give 1 privilege to everyone than 38. But do they care? No. We were just talking with Mikko about these applications that state that you call them, there's this Finnish company that does this wireless network monitoring stuff. And they say, our application cannot work without admin rights. It can. That's when it needs a driver. Windows is built so that you can have a driver. It's totally unlimited in what it can do. It lives in the kernel mode. It has no concept of rights because it can do absolutely everything. You use a driver. You don't say, that's user mode bullshit. If you say that our application cannot run without admin, no, you're doing it wrong. It's not the structure of Windows, how it should work. Then you use the driver that lies in the kernel mode. And of course, my company specializes in getting rid of people's admin rights, so this really, really pisses me off. Not having an MSI. Have a setup.exe. And we can automate it. You can do whatever you want. You can script it however you want. No, I don't want to script it. Give me an MSI. It's Windows installer. That's why it's there. Give me an MSI. I still face this. These are more common. These actually are the ones that I face quite often. It's got a setup.exe that does something. Like Adobe did it in the beginning. You had that one executable, and then there was like this trade of, let's start Adobe Reader, and while it's running, we run process monitor to spy where it hides the real MSI, and then we will capture it and do what we want. It's like, come on, just give me the freaking MSI. Duh. Bad uninstallers. You know, you don't have to worry about bad uninstallers, because if you have bad uninstallers, which leaves your computer registry and hard disk very crappy, full of stuff, you don't have to worry because you can download CC Cleaner now and just For the past 2 decades, it's fixed everything as, as we've lately learned. But that's the reason why those existed, although that's not a really funny example, but that's the reason why those existed, because of bad uninstallers. Leaving things behind and not cleaning up. Wrong info on prerequisites. This is the newest example. Mikko and I both actually saw this. So the newest example was this. Visual C++ 2017 actually is not a new version, but it updates the 2015 one. Which means that when any application checks if that version is there, they both have version 14. Can we blame the dev? Actually, I think we should blame the dev who did those libraries. So I don't really want to blame too much on people not doing these prereq checks. But if you think about what bugs me most daily. Avecto, for example, I work with them all the time. They don't bug me. If I install their application, it says these are the prerequisites that you're missing. We're going to install it and everything's fine. But mostly, in many other cases, that's a total mess. They just do not check for things. It got really difficult when we went from Windows 7 to Windows 10, because you got .NET framework versions which are totally mixed up. And application developers also don't always remember that .NET frameworks are not cumulative. So they do the checks wrong. They check for 4, because there has to be 3.5 at least. But it has nothing to do with 3.5, because .NET is not cumulative. They're totally different frameworks. So you don't check for at least this level or up to this level. That doesn't work with .NET, for example. So it's maybe this is a slide that gives them some slack. I know it's not that easy always, okay? We're already up to 6. Now we get to the one which I know a few of you have been to my courses, so I know you guys can sleep for the next 2 minutes while I have my shout out on this. If you give a dev a possibility that the operating system manual or Visual Studio says that if you tick this box of changing a process from a normal process to a multimedia process, it will make your application 15 times faster. Who the hell would not tick that box? Sounds amazing. Let's make my computer 15 times faster. Now, the problem is, I've been waiting for this so long that I get to draw. I suck at drawing, but I seem to like it for some weird reason. I can give you these. I can sign these and sell these after the session. Let's take a new page, quick notes, and another new page. Here we go. In Windows, there are a few laws. One, only threads run. That's not a Windows law, that's an operating system law. Processes don't do anything. That's why you can't do any troubleshooting with Task Manager, because it only sees processes, and processes don't even execute code. So they can never be blamed. You can only blame threads, because threads are the particles that run on a CPU. Now, when a thread starts to run on a CPU, it has a few rules to it. A thread gets to run on a single CPU core, okay? So we have T1 here. Now, T1 starts to run, and by default, it runs for what are known as 2 ticks. This tick count comes from the value which is also totally misunderstood and has been for decades, which is this weird one here, advanced performance, advanced, this one up here. People really still even today believe that this actually has something to do with programs and background services. That would be way too obvious for Windows, of course. So it's absolutely nothing to do with programs and background services. This changes the tick count. It only says how many ticks a thread gets to run. If you have it set to programs, that means that every thread gets to run for 2 ticks. If you change it to background services, it gets 12 ticks. Now, why do they state it like this? It means that if you have a server, if it's running with this program setting, it means that whenever someone does something on the operating system, that will instantly get a chance to do something. But if you set it to the background services, it means that when the print spooler gets its chance, it has more time, and it's more probable that it actually gets to serve the customers that are not interactively using that computer. But if you look at a CPU, it has freaking no idea what's a service and an application. CPU is a thread, and the thread runs for a certain time, okay? Now, that's the tick count. Then we have another thing which is called the tick length. And this is how long are these ticks, okay? So 15 milliseconds by default. That's the default tick length in Windows, 15 milliseconds. So whenever something runs in Windows, usually it runs for 30 milliseconds, and then it might be someone else's turn to do something else. Now that became too slow when we got to 60 frames per second video. We have to update things faster. That's why in Vista they introduced a concept called a multimedia process, which means you can set a process to be a multimedia process, and then you can change that tick length. You can take it down to 0.5 milliseconds. You can see this on your machine if you use clockres from sysinternals. It shows that my current timer interval is 15.625 milliseconds. That's normal and that's good. Now, 2 years ago, Google suddenly announced that Google Chrome is 15 times faster than IE. And then Mark Rusinovich wrote a blog post saying you actually left a few details out of the ad because if you run Chrome in the background, IE is 15 times faster as well. Because you can't tell the CPU to tick at a different pace for Notepad and tick at a different pace for IE. Without admin rights, a dev, by choosing that multimedia process, can change the whole CPU's tick length, or the core's CPU tick length. You can't change it for a single process. It's the CPU level setting, which means that if I run things like, well, Google Chrome tries to do its best, and now what they've changed when Mark announced this, what they changed was that if you're not actively browsing something, then they try to get it up back to the 15.6 milliseconds. It'll take a while, but it'll go back up. Google tries to behave more nice now. And only when you're actively browsing with Chrome will it take it down. What's bad about this? The bad thing is this. Windows is built by this old assumption of having 30 milliseconds per thing happening, okay? Which means that all power management relies on this information. If you can rest for 30 milliseconds. So what happens in Windows is Windows normally does this. Calm, 30 millisecond stuff, and sometimes we sleep for a while and save battery, and then we do something. Google Chrome shoots up and goes, makes the freaking whole operating system just tap dance, okay? That's why you use battery life. The worst case is at that point when Google did this very, very aggressively was 40% down with your battery life by running Chrome. Sounds very good. Make your application 15 times faster. Sounds awesome. Destroys the whole freaking power management. Someone mentioned Snagit on this stage. I don't remember who it was, but someone did, I remember. Snagit was a good example. I was running Snagit all the time because I do screen capturing all the time. Nowadays I don't. It's not hovering up there. Why? Because they do this as well. If you have Snagit running all the time, your computer is going crazy. So I only start it when I do screen capturing. They have a kind of a, maybe they can get away with this because they have a certain reason. They might need you to capture video from the screen. So they have to be able to react very fast. But then I have a thing called PDF Creator. I don't know if anyone uses it, but PDF Creator, it installs a PDF printer. And if you have that PDF printer installed, it does the same thing. Because maybe sometime it's not fast enough to print every 30 milliseconds. You know when your A4 spits out of the printer every 1 millisecond, so your you can figure this out from your computer, do power config, -energy, -duration, 5. Normally it's 60 seconds, so I can't do that with this timing. So we'll do this for 5 seconds only. It does an energy report, and it has all sorts of cool stuff, but people many times forget that it also has these timers in it. So if we'll just start energy report. Oh, that's not going to work. I didn't intend to do this, but luckily it's not a Microsoft conference, so I can do this. You know this thing they were talking about called Windows as a Service, where you just upgrade and everything works smoothly. I told them I'll do it whenever they get their own shit working, because my Edge has never started after I did my first upgrade, okay? So my Edge is still not working after the upgrade. I haven't seen a working upgrade yet. So when they show it to me, then I'll believe, okay? So we'll have to do this another way. Let's do, let's file open here. And where do we have it? See users, Sami update. Why did I put it there? That's a weird place. Oh yeah, because I was showing the demo on the... So if you look at this report, you'll see that the report states that we have these bad timers here. Platform timer resolution, outstanding timer requests, 10,000 milliseconds by Chrome. It actually makes it really easy to hunt down those hyperactive processes. Again, this would require knowledge of how the operating system works, where you build those apps on, which is why I like teaching devs as well, because they should really go to classes more. They hate the new universal stuff. Why? Well, because it doesn't make any money. And I have to agree with that. If someone comes to me, my godson came to me, he studies at the university, he came to me and he asks me, like, I want to start to be an application developer. What should I develop my apps on? You know, I'm not going to tell him, like, you should do universal apps because they run so smoothly on an Xbox and a Windows phone. Because everyone uses a Windows phone, so you're going to make a lot of money. It's just stupid. So I get the problem. It is really difficult to now state, like, it should be very cool to run universal apps. It won't make you that much money. But don't hate the actual platform. Honestly, do not hate the platform. Because, first of all, these application packages are contained in a single file, which is what we've always been asking and the Linux guys have always had. You can just take a file and put it in the file system and it works. It's awesome. But it's a Finnish operating system, so I'll leave it at that. I will send the only review that I have for Paula from the previous sessions. There's one big mistake. It is not Linux. It's Linux. Linus Torvalds wrote it, and it's called Linux, not Linux. I told her many times, she still doesn't remember. I have this weird thing that she doesn't listen to me or something, I don't understand. That's weird. So, the problem was in Vista, they came up with the integrity idea. But now the problem is that if we have multiple applications running at the same integrity level, we can't protect them from each other. Something's at the low integrity level, they can do whatever they want against each other. So AppX allows what are known as app containers. Now app containers allow you to have SIDs for applications, which means that we can put ACLs between these apps, and of course we can put ACLs between your apps and the operating system, your devices, which will be one of the things that 1709 changes because of GDPR. One of the things is that now it will start honestly asking every time an app wants to use a device. They asked for like cameras previously. But now when you get the new Windows, it's going to start asking you a hell of a lot more questions. That's because of GDPR. Because GDPR states that these have to be specifically accepted if you want it to access something. So you can see this with Process Explorer if you want to have a technical view of this. So go for Process Explorer and just look at a universal app. So first of all, you see these app containers here. These are low. Integrity level says app container, but Mark just wrote it like this because he wants people to understand that there are further limitations inside of this, but these are low. So if you see app container, that equals to a integrity level of low. It's exactly the same, but then that means that this can be managed like any security principles in Windows. Oh my God. How fast can you fix Process Explorer when you have 9 minutes between you and the beer? Let's try this very fast, okay? So, no. Current user. Software. Sysinternals. Process Explorer. Delete. Yes. Oh, I read this before, so I'm not going to read it now. Yeah, yeah. I hope they didn't change it. Okay, so we got, let's open up, for example, we got the brand new calculator here. So that's a new universal app. So we got calculator running there, and I want to still have the select columns and, no, not virus total, sorry, integrity level. Just want to have these here. It makes my life a little bit easier. So here we have an app container called calculator. If you go for properties and you go for security, you see these things here. The SIDs. So this is actually done by the old traditional access control mechanisms of Windows. So you see this here, for example, that group membership is flagged as capability. They're known as capability SIDs. So in this case, for example, when you have this here, that means that you can access the internet connection. So it's using traditional old SIDs to achieve this. Then this application itself has a SID, which means that we can control. We can say this application, Angry Birds, cannot touch this application, which is our Dynamics or whatever. So we can actually control applications even if they're running on the same level of integrity. So application containers, AppX, I would be happy to change everything to it. But we all know the real problem is just the availability of actually needed applications. As long as they don't get the store up and running with 1 million more applications, this will not happen. But I just try to tell people who are interested in development that they should not think of like Microsoft did a really bad thing when they came up with this universal apps. It's based on a lot of security research. It's based on a lot of security requirements. They're superb compared to your traditionally installed MSI packages in many, many ways, both management and security. This, you must know why these are here. Clash of Clans, Angry Birds, why are they there? Finnish. Make most of the money that our country makes currently. Clash of Clans has been sold with $1 billion twice in the past 5 years. They are best taxpayers, that's why they get on my slides. Management tools misunderstood. First of all, this might look like I'm just losing it, but no more MMC, Honolulu. Okay? Forget MMC, go Honolulu. If you haven't seen Honolulu, Honolulu is the new management interface for servers. Download it, it's now being available in technical preview for about 2 weeks. That is what's going to replace Server Manager, it's what's going to replace all MMCs. It has a new snap-in interface, so it can be added with third-party apps, meaning that's the new MMC. Forget, like we saw in one of the previous sessions, we talked about Silverlight. Silverlight is gone, MMC is going to be gone, everything's going to be replaced by Honolulu. But at the same time, we need PowerShell for everything. If you buy something that does not have a PowerShell interface, don't buy it. That is just ridiculous if you do that. Everything is based on PowerShell now. So just don't buy stuff that you can't manage with PowerShell. It's a very, very easy thing. I always tell people, come back to me when you get PowerShell interfaces on this. Come back to me, we'll reconsider. Now you're off the table. We'll find a competitor. What is this one? PAW. I did a session at Ignite last week where I announced a new product called the iPaw. iPaw is my own version of a privileged access workstation. I hope it sells better because I put the I in front of it, so I thought it's like people would like it more. Anyway, paws are privileged access workstations. You do not this is a big thing when you choose applications again. If there are things that you need to manage, make sure you only buy apps that can be managed from a workstation. One of the biggest things in the whole history of Windows, biggest misunderstandings that people have done is that people manage servers with remote desktop. Back in 2000, the user manual states there are 2 remote desktop sessions that works as emergency consoles. They are freaking emergency consoles. You're not supposed to touch those boxes. Doesn't it feel a little bit weird that you got a big bank, for example, and you got 400 admins? And they're all calling each other. Can you log off the box? There are no more connections available. That's why remote server administration tools has been there since Windows 2000. It has 16.7 million licenses. You're not supposed, it's like Jeffrey Snower now says it's very nice. You're not supposed to pet your servers. You treat them as cattle, not like pets. You don't go one by one. I'm going to upgrade you now. You use PowerShell or remote server administration tools and just upgrade 10,000 at the same time. I don't know if 10,000 sounds like ridiculous for you, but I realized how this world now works when I went to Build Conference 2014 in San Francisco. And we played Titanfall in the biggest movie theater in San Francisco. All the halls were just multiplayer game, 8 against each other, Titanfall on the big 18-meter screens. Like that's what I call like an attendee party. That's all, and free beer, of course. So we played it, but the coolest thing wasn't playing Titanfall, which was brand new at that time. The coolest thing was they had statistics from Azure that they showed all the time while we played. And we played Titanfall so freaking much that they used for pre-calculating 3D objects. We pumped up, the best one we got to was up to 150,000 virtual servers serving our game. Play more, 150,000 servers. That kind of like blew my mind. That's why people can't do like one by one. Oh, they're playing very much now. All right, so make sure all management tools work from a workstation, not just a server. They're not supposed to be running there. Plus, if you saw Michael's session, for example, just before this, one good point. The new server, if you go to the 2 times a year upgrading server, it does not have a GUI. It's not even on the roadmap. There is no GUI for the next server, unless you buy the LTSC version and then wait 3 years and upgrade then, which is the reality, probably. But like if you would go with the one Microsoft believes people are willing to go for, it doesn't have a GUI, not even the roadmap, not next 3 years, because Honolulu is the GUI. Not ready for whitelisting. Super quick demo, and then we're done. If you run any whitelisting applications, make sure that you only buy applications that the devs sign both binaries, meaning executables and DLLs. Make sure they do it. Because otherwise, what happens is this. I have a very good app locker. I'm very proud of it. But Slack, hugely popular. Millions and hundreds of millions of people use it. Now they decided that someone had the great idea of putting colors out, like, on top of IRC. It's like exactly like the old IRC chat, but has a few cool graphics to it. But it's like super popular everywhere. It won't run. Why? Because it's the worst case example of an application. Don't tell Slack. I'm out of time. Don't tell Slack, guys, I told this. Luckily, this is recorded, so kind of met that's too late now. Anyway, what does this do? It's an application that does 3 things wrong. 1, doesn't sign DLLs. 2, installs to the user profile, not to the program files. 3, updates itself without asking. That combination is the worst enemy of any whitelisting. Because I can't say allow everything from program files, because no one can write there, it's secure. But they put it in the app data, which means if I allow app data, the normal user can put whatever they want. Put it in there and it runs. So I would like to say that I want to trust it if it's signed by Slack. But I can't, because only the executables are signed, not the DLLs. So we end up in these trick things, which I will do as the last thing here, which is I have to fix this. Honestly, this is my own machine. This is not the demo machine. I need to fix this thing, which is something I do freaking every 2 weeks with Slack, which is sign. This is my own signing tool, which just adds a separate secondary signature to that of Slack's, okay? So I'll first have to find Slack, so that will be user Sami, update Slack, oops, nope, sorry, my bad, it's of course local, and Slack, and let's see, yes, there's a new version. It has been upgrading itself 5 times already, okay? Since like this year. So let's go and do app 280 and just freaking sign every binary that you can find. It signs all the DLLs that they don't sign, which means we can run it through our whitelisting. It's a lot easier for me than trying to get these devs to understand how important signing is. Can't blame them because they're actually doing quite good because they sign the binaries, but they don't realize that since 2 years ago, that's not enough. I block PowerShell. I can't run PowerShell as a limited user. I loved it when Paula did this as an example in the morning. She asked, do you allow people to run PowerShell? If I run PowerShell here, I'm not an admin, that will not run. I will never ever allow limited users to run PowerShell because every CryptoLocker virus that we've had since the past 5 years uses PowerShell. I just kill all ransomware from my machine with a simple rule of saying don't run PowerShell. Only admins run PowerShell. But that's not enough, because if I block PowerShell and PowerShell ISE, it doesn't help at all, because the bad guys now use systems.management.dll, which is the engine of PowerShell. So I need to go to the DLL level. But now the app developers have to go there as well. And now my life will be so much better because, no, it still doesn't work. You know what happens? Sadly, they changed the other binaries as well. It's not just the version, they changed the primary binaries that are in the root folder. So that will take a while. So again, signing DLLs, make sure they sign all executables and DLLs, otherwise your whitelisting will end up in these thousands of lines of things. People hate whitelisting because it takes thousands of lines. I have an application list that's been running since 2002 for a military environment with more than 400 currently running applications, and we have 14 lines. So you can do like AppLocker in really wrong way or really good way. Some people have like 1,000 lines in their whitelist because they're doing it totally incorrect. Usually running admin rights, which is the biggest mistake. So that's still running. We'll leave it running because I know I'm 5 minutes late already. My courses, Twitter handles, follow me. Session code is 6. And I think someone wants to say something, but I'm going to say thank you, okay?